In today's video, I'll share my 16 tips for avoiding most common headaches during a cruise vacation. Although these tips are mainly aimed at first-time travelers, I'm sure anyone planning a cruise can benefit from them, even those who have been on a cruise dozens of times. Between us, after hearing about and even seeing some situations where passengers were unable to board the ship or even left behind in port, it seems like some of those more experienced passengers could benefit from learning and putting these tips into practice more often. But don't worry, if you follow the 16 tips, you definitely won't have this kind of problems on your trip. I follow this list myself and use each of these tips during my travels, and I can guarantee that thanks to them, I have never had any problems on my cruises. You won't believe how small actions like the ones in this video can transform your cruise voyage from a possible nightmare into a relaxing adventure. And don't forget, if this video is useful or interesting to you, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. You'll be helping other cruises with their travels and our channel to grow. And you'll no doubt give me inspiration and motivation to create more cruises and travel videos for you every week here on the channel. But now, it's time for me to tell you my 16 tips for a headache-free cruise voyage. Let's go! Hello cruise mates, and welcome back to Cruising the World. If this is your first time visiting the channel, it is great to have you here. I'm Horton Novak, and on this channel we'll talk about amazing cruises, travels around the world, and everything in between. In today's video, I'll share my favorite tips for a headache-free cruise voyage and how to avoid the things that could spoil your first or 10th cruise. And my first tip starts before you even board the ship. Stay in a hotel the night before your cruise. This first tip may seem obvious, but you can't imagine how many people miss their cruises because they arrive late at the port. So much can happen, especially if you don't live near to the port city and you have to travel by plane, bus or even car to your destination. I have had friends who arrived on the ship without the bags, and others who weren't even able to get to the port to embark because the flights were delayed or cancelled. And these types of unexpected things can also happen on a bus or even on a car trip. Imagine if you drive into the port on the day of your sailing, but you break down or get a flat tire along the way. And to top it off, you're in the middle of nowhere and dozens of kilometers away from your ship. I'm not being negative, but unfortunately these things happen and you have no control over them, right? For these and many other reasons, I recommend arriving at the city where you plan to board at least a day before your cruise, especially if it's located far away or in another country. It is best to spend the night at a hotel in a central location or close to the port to avoid any delays or missed opportunities. Or better yet, why not arrive a few days early to explore the city and its surroundings before your cruise? I always do that, especially when I travel abroad. By doing so, I get to see and explore fantastic places before embarking on my cruises. Additionally, it allows me to relax without worrying about getting to the port on time and facing any delays. Have all the required documents with you. This is another super important travel tip. Before leaving your home, make sure that you have all your travel documents with you in a safe but easily accessible place. To expedite the process at the port, have a printed or digital copy of your ticket and boarding documents on hand. You won't believe how many people forget or misplace their important documents such as passports and tickets, either by leaving them at home or packing them in the checked luggage. In the best case scenario, the passenger will have to open the bags at the airport or port to find the documents. And in the worst case, travelers may not be able to board because the bags have been collected and they don't have the documents with them. It is important to ensure that you have all the necessary visas in your passport or bring printed or digital confirmations with you. Most cruises will not let you board without a visa. However, even if this happens, you may be prevented from leaving the ship in some countries' ports. This happened to some friends at Mumbai's port who couldn't leave the ship due to the lack of proper visa. Don't forget, for international travel, you will need to carry your passport along with all the required visas. On the day of your cruise, board as early as possible. Nowadays, many cruise companies allocate arrive time slots or allow passengers to schedule their arrive time at the port to avoid long boarding queues. I recommend arriving at the port or booking your arrival time as early as possible. Not only can you avoid boarding queues, but you can also explore and discover what the ship has to offer at your own pace before the ship gets too crowded. Bring swimwear, a change of clothes, and other essentials with you when board. Check your bags at the terminal, but board the ship with a backpack or bag, with swimwear, a change of clothes for after your swim or for dinner, and other essentials such as your glasses, sunscreen, camera, and medications that you may need after boarding, including motion sickness medicine. Typically, cabins on the cruise ships are only accessible to passengers in the afternoon, sometimes around 1 or 2 p.m. or even later, depending on the ship's arrival time at port and the amount of time required by the crew to clean and prepare the cabins. So, by bringing a backpack with these essentials, you can relax and enjoy exploring the ship, maybe taking some photos for Instagram, or perhaps relax in the pool or hot tub without worrying while you wait for your cabin to be available. Also, the extra change of clothes in your backpack can be a great idea even after your cabin is available, because your suitcase may take a while to arrive in your cabin, in which case you will have a change of clothes with you for dinner. Dress code, what to wear on board. Speaking of bags, it is a good idea to know what the dress code is on board your ship before you pack your bags. On most cruise ships, passengers will wear casual clothing including shorts and swimwear during the day, but at night, more formal clothing is usually required to visit the main restaurant and sometimes even the theater. But the rules for this depend on the style of each cruise company. Formal clothing is essential on more classic and traditional ships, such as those from Cunard, for example. More modern cruise lines like Royal Caribbean and MSC allow more casual attire in the dining room most nights. But they also offer at least 1 or 2 nights during each voyage that are exclusively formal, giving interested passengers the opportunity to dress up the most glamorous looks at dinner. It's a good idea to bring at least a blazer and dress shirt for men and a dressy dress for women, in case you are planning to attend a formal evening on board. Many passengers look forward to formal evenings and really dress to impress. But if a formal night out isn't for you, don't worry. You can dine at the buffet or other restaurants on board without feeling obliged to dress up in formal attire. Oh, don't forget to check if your ship normally offers special events on board or if a specific event will be celebrated during your trip, where you may need something special to wear. A good example of a specific event might be a cruise in October celebrating Halloween, where a costume might be a requirement for one of the onboard parties. Or even team nights on board, such as those from Voyages, where during the Scarlet Night, passengers are invited to participate wearing at least one piece of clothing in red color. Or yet the popular pajama party, where passengers come dressed in the most daring or fun pajamas. Bring your most frequent medications with you. This is also a very important tip, which many people forget and only remember when they are in need of it. Bring your frequent medications and other more common medications such as allergy and motion sickness pills from home. Medicine stocks on ships are limited, and generally, the shops don't stock many options for passengers on board. Not to mention that even if you find what you're looking for, you usually end up paying a lot more than on land. Another thing, when traveling with prescription medications, it's a great idea to bring the prescription or a note from your doctor. Some places like Dubai are very restricted with medications. You can check the internet pages of the countries you're going to visit to find out more about restrictions on more specific medications. Visit the main restaurant as soon as you board. One of the first things I do when I board a cruise ship is to visit the main restaurant to check where my table for the trip is located. This way, at dinner time I can simply enter the restaurant and go straight to my table without having to wait in line with the other passengers. Another advantage of checking your table early is that you can request changes. Have you been allocated to a table with other people but you prefer something more private? Met some friends and want to sit with them for the rest of the trip? Is your table in a location you don't like? No problem. Visit the main restaurant and talk to the maitre d' at the entrance desks. They will do their best to accommodate your changes. Don't go to the ship's buffet on the first day of sailing. Speaking of restaurants, don't go to the ship's buffet as soon as you board. You'll quickly find that everyone has the same idea. Usually, as soon as it opens for lunch, the place will quickly fill up with passengers reserving tables, many of them with several suitcases and bags taking up the chairs and blocking the aisles. This is definitely not going to be a very relaxing lunch on board. Not to mention, it won't give you a very good impression of the ship. Instead of fighting with other passengers to find a spot at the buffet, look for a less crowded option for your first lunch on board. Most ships offer all the cafes and snacks bars that will also be open during embarkation day. Drink packages are often not worth it. Do the math. Drink packages often seem like a great idea, but are they really worth it? Many times, to make the price of the package worth it, you will have to drink a lot. And I mean a lot. If you normally drink a lot, the package might be worth it. But if you are the type of person who likes to drink a cocktail at the end of the day, or a glass of wine with dinner, you will spend a lot less paying for individual drinks. Another problem with these packages is that you don't even notice we end up drinking more just to make the package worth it. I'm not one to really drink alcohol myself, but I brought one of those packages of soft drinks on board. And without even realize it, I was forcing myself to drink soda all the time to make the package worth it. Personally, a package of drinks is something I wouldn't buy again, unless it was on a super, gigantic mega sale. Today, if I want a soft drink, I buy it at the restaurant or bar, and end up spending much less than I would pay per day on the soda package, without forcing myself to drink too much. Do the muster drill as early as you can. By law, all passengers on a cruise ship must take part on a muster drill before a cruise ship leaves port for a new voyage. During the muster drill, passengers have to go to a pre-assigned area of the ship where a member of the crew will explain in details all the procedures on board in case of an emergency. Nowadays, after the pandemic, most companies have all emergency instructions on the cabin's TV and on the mobile app. After watching the video on one of the devices, the passenger only has to present themselves to a crew member at the pre-assigned station to confirm that they have watched the video and understood the explanations, thus avoiding crowds and a lot of time standing around waiting for the group demonstration. As ships can only leave port once all passengers on board have completed the muster drill, you will definitely hear announcements on board urging X number of passengers to complete the process. Don't be one of these passengers who leave the muster drill to the last minute and often end up delaying the ship leaving port. I always do and recommend doing the muster drill as soon as you board and your stations are available. Watch the video on your mobile or on your cabin's TV and report to your station. After that, you can enjoy your first day on board with nothing else to worry about, except maybe what you're going to drink at the pool bar or eat for dinner. Don't expect much from the internet on board. You are embarking on your trip and expect internet like the one you have at home? Well, it's not quite like that on cruise ships. Internet on board most cruise ships compared to a land-based plan is extremely expensive, on average $30 per day. And despite the top prices, they are generally not the best, most of the time very slow and unstable, especially on older ships. Unfortunately, passengers won't have many options if they want to stay connected, because the mobile connection won't work on board. Well, unless the ship is very close to land, and only if you're standing some standard decks of the ship. And don't forget that you might be paying much higher rates if you activate your cell phone in international waters. Many companies offer discounted packages for more than one device if you are traveling with family or friends, which can help reduce costs a little. Be sure to check your cruise planner. Use the cruise planner, the newspaper-like brochure that your attendant will leave in your cabin every day during your voyage, to know everything that's happening on the ship at all hours of the day and night, so you don't miss any of your favorite events on board. Want to participate in a trivia session, watch a show at the theater, visit the casino, or maybe play bingo? The cruise planner will tell you exactly how and when to get there. It also lists directions and opening hours of all main places on board, including service desks, shops, restaurants, swimming pools, and much more. A note here, more recently, many companies are moving to digital versions of the cruise planners that passengers can access on the company's app or on the cabin's TV. But if you still prefer the printed version, inform your cabin attendant and they will leave a copy in your cabin every day. And did you know that you can request a copy in your own language if you don't speak English? Yes, you can. Cruise ships usually offer versions in several languages, including Portuguese, Italian, Spanish, German, and many others. Plan what you're going to do in each port before even boarding. Many people leave planning what they are going to do in each scheduled port to the last minute. More often than not, after boarding the cruise ship, and many times only based on what's offered by the excursion teams on board. Don't get me wrong, ship excursions are very practical. Their main advantage is that the ship will wait for the group to return in case of delay, but they can be much more expensive than with a local guide, and sometimes somewhat limited in options of what to see and do. While it's super practical and safe to visit a new area on a ship tour, I recommend doing a little research into what's popular and available in the city or region you are visiting. Check websites and see what other travelers are recommending or not. You will often find that you don't even need excursions because all of the area's attractions are within walking distance of the port, and that you can many times just walk off the ship to visit the city. So be sure to do your homework and research the ports you are going to visit. Not only to save money, but also because you might discover some gems to visit that without a little research you wouldn't even know that were there. A note of things to keep in mind whether you're exploring alone or using a local guide. Be back on the ship before departure time. Ships have several onboard notifications indicating what time you have to be on board. Make sure you set your watch to the ship's time and not local time. If you take a tour with a local guide, please confirm that the tour will be back before the departure time. Before buying your tour package, check the reputation of the guide or company online. Also, don't forget to confirm that they guarantee the return of what you paid in case of route changes or port cancellations by the cruise company. Ships do not wait for passengers. Well guys, if you noticed in the previous tip, I really emphasize being back on the ship at the scheduled time. And the reason for this is that ships don't wait for passengers. If you arrive late at the port and the ship has already started moving, there is no point in running, because there is no turning back. So make sure your watch is synchronized with the ship's. And just to be safe, always return to the ship at least half an hour before departure time. The only exception here is if you have a ship excursion, because in case of delay, the captain will wait for the group. But whether you are on a private tour or exploring the port yourself, make sure you are back on time. Otherwise, you might be left behind, and you will have to arrange your own transportation to return home or rejoin the cruise at your next port. Travel insurance is essential. Another thing you should never travel without is travel insurance that also covers your cruises. With good insurance, you'll be covered for accidents, medical expenses, cancellations, and other unexpected problems that may arise during your trip. Travel insurance will definitely help you a lot with these unplanned expenses, especially if you're traveling abroad, where last-minute medical treatment or accommodation can cost you a fortune. Check your bags at the end of the trip? And when that set time to leave the ship comes, most passengers prefer to check in their bags and collect them at the port when leaving the ship. For this procedure, the passenger must attach number tags to the luggage and leave the bags in the corridor outside the cabins the night before disembarking, normally between 8 and 10 at night. If you're checking your bags, don't forget to leave your passport and other documents you may need, clothes for disembarking, frequent medications, and personal products such as toothbrushes outside your suitcase. You wouldn't believe how many people forget this detail and end up having to disembark at the port wearing only their pajamas. I prefer to disembark with my suitcase, because I find it more practical to go straight to the port exit without having to wait for an allocated time to disembark, and then having to find my suitcase in the storage area at the port. But this option can be a little bit more complicated and laborious for most passengers, as it often involves going down ramps and packed elevators, carrying all your belongings. So checking in your bags ends up being the most practical and popular option for most passengers. And this was my tip number 16. I hope you enjoyed these tips and that they can help you have a fantastic experience on your next cruise. If I left out any tips you had in mind of this video, or if you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comment section below. Who knows, your question might even inspire another video for the channel. But I think that's all for today. Safe trips, see you in the next video.